Hello, I'm Rebecca de Mendonca and this is a really quick video to show you how I go about using Spectrum Colourfix Primer, how I paint it onto my surface and how I sometimes use two colours as a way of preparing a surface for pastel work. So this is mainly for my students of my Zoom workshops and online courses. So let's get started and I hope you find it useful. Now for this demonstration I'm going to be using the Colourfix primer that you get in the pots that you paint on yourself, but you can buy it pre-primed and I think it's called Colourfix paper, and this is a sheet of it here, and you can hear that it is, you know, it's a lovely textured surface. However, the reason I tend not to use this is because it comes pre-primed in just one flat colour, and I tend to like to be able to blend a couple of colours together and create a little bit more movement in my surface. So over at my table now, I'm using Mount card to paint the Colourfix primer onto, which I think in America you call matte card. I've got a very cheap decorator's brush which has virtually got to the end of its life. The thing about using brushes for this product is that it's so gritty, they just get worn away. I've got a pot of water and which I'll pop on there, and I've got various different colours. So this is Elephant, which is the one that I use for I've used for this piece here, and I painted that on just as it came out of the pot. So a little bit of a dip in the water and just paint it on. Now, because I've dipped my brush in the water and there was quite a lot of water on my brush anyway, it's going on quite thinly. Now that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. If I want to have less water, then I'll just take some off with a tissue and I can put it on a bit thicker. See? Now the advantages of having it put on quite thin is that you don't get such an intense texture to it, because it is quite a coarse surface, and if you want to thin that down a bit, then one of the ways to do it is to add more water. This is Colourfix Original. They do a smoother version or a less gritty version, which I think is quite good for kind of finer work, but I've always found that the original one is finer for me. Now what I'm doing as I'm talking, because it's going off so quickly, is those brush strokes. Let me just pop a bit more on so that I can see it. What happens is those brush strokes are going to be quite textured on the surface of my painting, and if I want to make it a smoother, flatter finish, I can just, as it dries, because it dries very quickly because it's an acrylic, as it dries, can you see how I'm just very lightly dragging my brush across? And this is an old painting decorating technique I used to use, which I think they call laying off. But can you see how that's, well, you probably can't see, but that's now a much smoother surface, but I still have the look of the brush strokes, which if I'm doing landscape work, I quite like. Now I'm going to, so that's if I was just using one colour. Now I'm going to wash my brush and I'm going to come back and do one mixing two colours together. So let's have a look at what happens when we mix two colours together. This is the piece that I'm using for my Beach Days Zoom live workshop. And on this, it's basically two colours mixed together. So I'm just going to put that to one side. And the two colours I'm mixing together are white, and this is, I've just discovered that I've hardly got any left, which is a bit disturbing, and this, which is raw sienna. Now the reason I'm mixing some white is because I find a lot of these colours are just a little bit too dark and a bit intense for me, and I want to thin them down a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint a bit of the raw sienna on, and you can see it's a really strong colour. And then I'm going to hope I've got enough white in my pot, which I have just about, to mix a bit in with it. And literally that's all I do, brush in one pot, brush in the other. And the same as I did with the previous piece is brush it on backwards and forwards, and then as it starts to go off, I just brush against it very, very lightly, and that will help the texture to disappear. Now, I know people who roller this on, who put it on in lots of different ways, and you just have to experiment with what works for you. I'm happier brushing it, and I feel as though I get a more of a surface that's suitable for me. If I was going to do animal work where the direction of the coat and the marks that I put on really matter, I'd make sure that my brush strokes, even though I'm smoothing them out quite a lot, I'd make sure that they kind of were going in the direction of the animal itself. If you want to find out more about using these primers, I have got an online course which will, if it's not up already, it will be up very soon. Well, I hope you found that useful. If you want to find out more about my courses, my Zoom workshops, online courses or in-person ones, take a look at my website. And in the meantime, happy pasteling.